welcome back to Franklin Covey's On Leadership series, now the world's largest subscribed to weekly podcast dedicated to the topic of leadership. My name is Scott Miller, and I serve as your weekly host and interviewer. Now, each week, we interview a different thought leader, CEO, someone who has expertise on the topic of leadership. And then there is today's episode, where we have perhaps the most iconic name in leadership alive today, a very dear friend of one of our co-founders, Dr. Stephen R. Covey. His name is a household name known to anybody who is literate, because that means you've read one of the 30 million copies of his nearly 20 books. John Maxwell is joining us today from a studio in Florida. John Maxwell, welcome to On Leadership.
Hey, great to be with you, Scott, and great to be with all of your viewers. And we all are indebted to Stephen Covey for what he did for our lives. And so it's an honor. Thanks for letting me come, and I hope I can add value to everybody today and kind of maybe lift their leadership a little bit.
John, you are the essence of everything Dr. Covey taught and was passionate about, an abundance mentality, and just the principles of great leadership. This latest book you've written is a gift, The Leader's Greatest Return, Attracting, Developing, and Multiplying Leaders. I want to talk today about all things leadership with you, not just this book, but the many books you've written. John, for those of our listeners and viewers that have read your books but aren't familiar with your entire journey, would you take a few minutes to kind of reconstruct how you got into the leadership business, why you became an author, why you enjoy it, and kind of how this book bug took off in making you one of the world's most prolific leadership writers ever?
Thank you, Scott. I will be glad to. Truthfully, I started off as a pastor and went to my first little country church in southern Indiana and just basically thought I would spend my life pastoring. But one of the things I had the ability to do is I had the ability to grow a church. And in my second church in Ohio, by the time I was 28, it was the 10th largest church in America, and people were coming to me and they were saying, how did you grow this congregation to the size? And honestly, in the beginning, I would say, well, I work hard and, I love people and, I feel I have a calling, and I would just give them answers. But I really didn't know how I was growing the congregation until I just went inside myself and began to say, okay, why am I doing this pretty well? And I came to the conclusion that I was a good leader. And I began to study leadership. I grew up in a leader's home. In fact, my father's 98, still living, terrific leader. Wow. And so leadership was kind of natural to me. But I came across a principle that I bought into it at about 25, and that principle was that everything rises and falls on leadership. And the moment that I bought into that and became convinced that everything in education, in government, in business, in religion, everything rises and falls on leadership without any question. Once I bought into that, I really felt called to develop leaders. And so I felt this would be a mission. This would be something that I could do that would help a lot of people. If I can help leaders get better, I help a lot of people get better. In fact, kind of the little deal I try to lead under today is basically we just try to add value to leaders who multiply value to others. And so I got into the leadership field and was still pastoring. And I started to write books. When I started writing, I was just writing because most of my colleagues that were pastors, they didn't know how to lead. They were theologues. We knew scripture, but to be honest with you, we weren't very good with leadership. We didn't have any leadership classes or courses in college or seminary. So I started writing leadership for basically church leaders. And after I had done this for about 10 years, 12 years maybe, my publisher sat down with me one day and said, we've been doing a lot of research on you because my books were starting to sell pretty good. And they said, we're finding that 2/3 of your books aren't bought by pastors or religious people, basically. They're bought by business people on the secular side. And I was shocked. I said, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. I had no idea. And it was at that moment I felt called. Okay, that's a word that many perhaps wouldn't use, but I felt called to cross over and go into a world that perhaps could use some good values-based leadership teachings and apply it to their lives and to their companies and businesses and to themselves. And so I did. I crossed over and entered into that world, and I was on a very steep learning curve for the first 3 years, but I got there. And I just have always determined very simply that everything I do, I add value to people. I'm very intentional. Everything I do, I add value to people. And so I started asking leaders, questions on what do they need, how what could I teach on that would serve them, and they began to talk to me about how to develop themselves as leaders. How do I develop a leadership team, and so I started teaching and then writing my books off of the questions they were asking me, and really almost everything that I published has really come from a question or for somebody else's idea, really not my own at all. And I ask a lot of questions. In fact, I wrote a book called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And so I ask a lot of questions, and I'm a good listener, and I just do a lot of writing from basically what people tell me. And I've written books pretty much based on the needs of other people. And it's really paid off because then when the book comes out, it's helpful, practical, and people, get it, and hopefully it helps them be a better leader.
John, it's apparent that you have a very outwardly focused mindset. And that, I think, resonates in your abundance mentality, in your generosity, in your deliberate and intentional focus on helping other people. Has that always been sort of a natural trait of yours? Did you learn that as you grew as a leader? How would you advise our listeners and viewers who are, like me, an abundant person, but also, intent on our own brand and intent on our own success and trying to balance, our needs with serving other people's needs? I'm going to guess a lot of people are more like me than they are perhaps like you. Give me some advice.
Well, I think they are. And really, it's no credit to myself. First of all, I grew up in a leader's home. My father was very intentional in adding value to people. He was a successful college president. He was in ministry. In fact, he started over 40 different congregations. So, I mean, he was very successful in what he did, but he really loved helping and adding value to people. So I saw it practiced at home. And then if you think about it, I started off in ministry. And so I didn't start off in business. I didn't start off to make money. I started off to help people with making some important decisions that I thought would have some maybe eternal benefits to them. So in ministry, that's what you do. You just add value to people. And honestly, Scott, we have 7 companies. We have what we call the John Maxwell Enterprise. We have, I have the largest coaching company in the world, and we have a corporate training company, and we have 2 nonprofit organizations that have trained over 6 million people in every country of the world. And honestly, everything we do starts off with just this simple principle: add value to people. In fact, what we teach our coaches is very simple. We are people of value that add value to people because we value people. We are people of value that value people, so therefore we add value to people. And so honestly, I've done very well financially, but I making money has never been my goal. And like in COVID-19 right now, and our CEO of all of our 7 companies, Mark, and I talk daily. And when it happened, I said, Mark, remember, we value people. We put them first. And it's not about money. And obviously, you have to make money to have a business. We've got 7 of them, so we know how to do that. But it's all about the people. So put the people first. Do the right thing for all of our people in all of our organizations. And that has been our foundation, and it just works. And honestly, if I added value to people and I went bankrupt tomorrow, I would be okay. But if I had a lot of money but I didn't add value to people, I wouldn't be okay. I'm not called to make money. I'm called to help people. And so that is the core of my books. That's the core of everything. I wrote books. I had a mentor that had written 5 books. I hadn't written any. I hadn't, Scott, I hadn't even planned on writing any books. That wasn't in my, I didn't have like a desire to go write a book. And one day in a lunch mentoring time, I asked Les Parrott, his name is Les Parrott. I said, Les, why do you write books? And he said, I want to influence people that I'll never know. I want to add value to people that I'll never meet. And as soon as he said that, I said, I'm going to become a writer. I'm going to write books. And then I loved it. He looked at me and said, don't write books to make money, John. He said, most people never make money writing books. And I said, I want to write books to add value to people. I want to extend my influence beyond my personal touch. And that's why I got into it. And little did I know that, I don't know, 35 million books later, people are, getting help from it. But again, I didn't get in to make money. I got into add value to people. I stay in to add value to people. People say, I'm 73. They're saying, well, why are you still in the game? It's very simple. I've never got tired of adding value to people. If I was in it for money, I could retire, I'd be done. But I don't even think there's a finish line, to be honest with you, if you play an infinite game. So I just every day understand that my responsibility is to, in every situation with every person, add value to them. And when I was young, I was influenced by Zig Ziglar, who said, Zig, who became a great friend of mine, but Zig said, if you'll help people get what they want, in other words, if you'll add value to people, they'll help you get what you want. And so you just put them first and do that. And then you just reap the benefits from it. But I'm more committed to sowing than I am to reaping. So, Robert Louis Stevenson said, I consider the success of my day based on the seeds I sow, not the harvest I reap.
Well said.
I buy into that, Scott, big time.
Yeah, well said. John, your books are treasures. This one is a gift, The Leader's Greatest Return. I want to make sure we have some time to talk about some of the concepts that I found most relevant in this book. How many books total, John? How many books have you written in total?
Well, I don't know.
You lost track.
It's so funny
this
because
is not a
I
hard
don't
question,
keep,
John.
Well, no, I think I've written 83. And the only reason I think I've written 83 is that's what my staff tells me I've written. But there are a whole bunch of books, how books, get revised.
Sure.
And I don't count those as books I've written. I mean, so I just kind of count it once. And so, 83, 84 maybe, which is no big deal, Scott.
Yeah.
You just have to be old. I mean, if you're not old, you can't write that many books. So I tell people like you just aren't old enough to write 83 books.
Oh, well, according to your dad, you've got about 50 left in you because you got at least 25 years left, right? So get cracking, brother.
Oh, yeah. My dad's amazing. Yeah, he's the most remarkable man I know. He's an amazing person.
What a compliment. I once heard George H.W. Bush, the former president, 41. He was interviewed by David Frost, the British journalist. And he asked George H.W. Bush of what accomplishment was he most proud, right? He was the president, vice president. He was the director of the CIA. He was a congressperson, ambassador to China. He was the chairman of the RNC. I mean, there was never a more qualified president than George H.W. Bush. And he said when the journalist asked him what was he most proud of, without skipping a beat, he said that my children still come home to visit me. And my sense is that you feel the same way about your father that perhaps the President Bush's children feel about him.
I do, Scott. I define success this way, and it works for me. I think success is having people who know you the best, love and respect you the most. I think that's success. And being a person that speaks on platforms and an author that writes books, it's very possible that I don't live what I write or I don't live what I teach. But can I tell you something? People who know me well know that. And so I've always said that I'm successful if my family and my inner circle look at me and they say, he's a good man. He's a good person. I consider that success because again, anybody can go make money. You don't have to be a good person to make money. There's a whole bunch of things you don't have to be a good person to do.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, if you want respect of people closest to you, you got to be a good person.
So I want to get to this book, but I'm compelled to ask, why is there a lemon sitting on your desk? What's going on there?
Oh, this is so funny. Well, okay. Well, we're in COVID-19, and so when I speak right now, just as a visual for people, I got my bowl of lemons over here, and hey, I mean, I can even squeeze this baby. I can even make my lemonade here, and of course, then I have my glass over here. And basically, people ask me during COVID-19, "What are you doing?" And every day I tell them the same thing: I'm making lemonade. That's what I'm doing. And the only difference, hey, Scott, the only difference is this. That, I tell leaders constantly that there are no two good consecutive days in a leader's life, because you're always dealing with issues and problems and people, and so you got a lot of difficulties and adversity to deal with. Leaders, the only problem that ever gets to the leaders are the big problems, and so so every day basically a leader gets a lemon, and so you take that lemon, squeeze that sucker, and you get one glass of lemonade out of it. But what I love about this setting is during COVID-19, we're getting showers of lemons. I mean, we get some. so I tell people, forget the glass. You can make a pitcher out of today. I mean, in fact, I'm making so much lemonade, I'm going to start a franchise. I think I'm going to have a Maxwell lemonade, franchise.
Oh,
So I've got it. I just got
books.
it, Scott, as a reminder to all of us, me and everybody else, is we all got lemons right now. And so make some lemonade, do something good with it.
When Franklin Covey fires me, I'm coming to work with you. But until that happens, let me ask you a couple of questions. In your current book, you talk in chapter 2 about leaders coach others on how to up their who luck. You call it their who, W-H-O
Yes.
luck. Will you
Yes.
riff on who luck for a moment?
Yeah, I will. Really, the who luck principle isn't mine. Jim Collins, Good to Great,
Sure.
is a good friend, and we were having lunch in Vegas. We were speaking at the same conference a few years ago, and he was the first person to talk to me about who luck, and I loved it then, and since that time I pulled away from that, and I built on it, and I really believe that that who we know is very important, and who we are around is very important. I mean, we've heard the old statement goes clear back to, I forget the old motivational pioneer that was, I can see his face.
John
But
Maxwell, I
he
think.
said, no, yeah, well, he's old,
He's all right.
but he was the one who said that who we are in 5 years will be based on the books we read and the people we
see.
associate with.
Yeah.
And Charles Tremendous Jones. It was Charles Tremendous Jones who said that. So on who luck, I decided to be very intentional with that, and so I have learning lunches, Scott, every month. I've had this for 40 years. I take people bigger, better, faster, smarter than me out to lunch, buy their lunch. I don't even eat because I have questions. So I've got 7 questions I want to ask them. And one of the questions I ask them in that learning lunch is, who do you know that I should know?
Yeah.
And it's just huge. I could take 2 hours now talking about the people I have met, because I asked somebody, who do you know that I should know? And they not only told me who I should know, but they set up the arrangement for me to meet them. And John Wooden, who was a phenomenal mentor of mine, I literally was with a principal of a school in Orlando, Florida, having lunch with him one day. And he was really having a learning lunch on me. He was a person that I guess I had mentored from afar. And so as we were wrapping it up, I said, well, who do you know that I should know? And he said, well, I know John Wooden. He said, he's a good friend of mine. And he knows about you, but he's never met you. And I said, well, I'd like to meet him. And so I flew out a month later, met him, and we had an 11-year mentoring relationship that was totally life-changing. So it's a dynamic question. And I teach people to ask that question and be very intentional in it, because it'll lead you to people that you would never meet without somebody helping you get there.
Hey, John, who do you know that I should know?
When people ask me that question all the time, I'll tell you what. Do you know Alan Malawi?
I know of him.
Yeah, he was the CEO of Ford. I think Alan Malawi in the last 25 years is the greatest CEO in America.
Wow.
And I love him. And I fell in love with him the first time I heard him talk before I ever met him. And then we played some golf together. We've become very good friends. But his ability, I think greatness in leadership is determined by somebody who takes something that's going the wrong way and stops it and turns it around. And I call them, Scott, U-turn leaders, where it looks like this, and they get it when the company's going down here, it's going south, and they take it and they bottom that little baby out, and then they start to bring it up on the other side. And I call them U-turn leaders because they took something going the wrong way, they stopped it and turned it and made it go the right way. And Alan Malawi is, there's just done better. I mean, he took Ford when it was bleeding billions of dollars losses, and turned it around, totally turned it around without government aid and without government support. So I just learned a lot from him. Yeah, you ought to know Alan, and we'll try to set that up for you.
Hey,
okay?
John, I know someone that you should know.
Who's that?
Do you know who Liz Wiseman is?
I love Liz.
She wrote the book Multipliers.
Multipliers, fabulous book, great lady. She's one of my favorite people.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. You stole the one that I have. My one celebrity friend, John. Seriously?
Yeah. In fact, when I was talking to Liz, she said, you ought to know Scott
Well,
Miller.
Of course she did. She endorsed my book. John, I want to talk about.
Oh, I love her. She's wonderful.
She is a class act. The book Multipliers. Franklin Covey has the license on multipliers, and we're launching a course. Liz is the real deal. I want to share.
I highly respect her very much.
Yeah, I do as well. John, I want to read a passage out of your book, and then I want you to take it wherever you want to go.
Okay.
Most people are insecure. Give them confidence. Most people want to feel special. Compliment them. Most people want a bright future. Give them hope. Most people need to be understood. Listen to them. Most people want direction. Walk with them. Most people are selfish. Speak to their needs first. Most people get emotionally low. Encourage them. Most people want to be included. Ask their opinion. Most people want success. Help them win. Most people want to be appreciated. Give them credit.
Yeah, I love that part of the book. I love it because I try to live it. Here, I'm glad you asked me this question, Scott. Here's what I think leaders do. Before you can lead people, Scott, you have to find people. And I think a lot of leaders, it's almost like they're on top of the mountain and they're looking down the valley below at all the people, and they're saying, "Come on up! It's the view is great up here. Come on up, meet me up here. Come on up to high ground." And I don't think that's what leaders do at all. I think if a leader's on top of the mountain and he or she sees people in the valley, I think the first thing they do is they get off the mountain and they go down to where the people are. I think the great leaders find common ground, and that's where they find the people. And when I wrote that in that book, I was basically saying to leaders, quit trying to lead from the top, go to the bottom, find the people, find out what their need is, and then ask if you can help them, ask if you can serve them. And by the way, when a leader goes to the top of the mountain, he or she doesn't go alone. When you lead people, you go with them. You bring people with you. So if I get to the top of the mountain and I'm all alone, I'm not a leader, I'm a hiker. If I'm a leader, I don't go to the top without people going to the top with me. And so I love the fact that we find them first, and we find them first by common ground. So if you and I had a lunch together, my first part of getting to know you would be I would just ask you where you were, and I'd ask you, what's your dream and what would you like, and I'd find out what you want, and then I would ask you if I could help you get what you want. And if you said yes, then we'd kind of develop a little plan, and I'd try to help you get there. And so I think that the great leaders are much more in tune of where their people are than where they are. And so I know where I am, and I know what I can do, and I can climb that mountain, and I can climb it very successfully. I got all that. And so now what I want to do is I want to help other people do that very same thing. I think when you have X amount of success in your life, unless you're narcissistic, I think that you basically say, okay, I know how to be successful. Now I wonder how many people I can make successful. And one of the reasons I love the Leader's Greatest Return is it's all about compounding your leadership success. Because again, we develop leaders we add value to leaders who multiply value to others. And the great return is in leaders. And it's easy to gather followers. Most leaders don't even develop a lot of leaders. Most leaders just have followers. And so it's easy to gather a crowd if you got some charisma, if you're good, people will follow you. Leaders are much harder to lead. It's like somebody like said, it's like herding cats. They're like herding cats. So leaders are harder to lead. So I wrote the book, Leader's Greatest Return, because it's a book on how do you develop other leaders. My greatest joy today is in the success of thousands and thousands of people that I've influenced and developed that are really, they're going to do bigger and better things than I've ever done. In fact, I kind of want them to, stand on my shoulder and go higher. I want that for them. So the leader's greatest return is the compounding. You see, if I just have followers, I add, but when I develop leaders, I multiply. And it's all about multiplication. But you find them. You find them, you ask questions, you connect with them, and only then do you lead them. You don't lead people until you connect with them. So that's what that passage in that book was all about.
John, you share a lot of concepts. One of them that I was kind of stricken with was this idea of the one sentence, right? The one sentence that describes a presidency. And then you take it to us and you kind of ask us, what is your one sentence? Would you explain that concept and encourage our viewers and listeners to be thinking about their one sentence?
No, I love that. And I in the book, I talk about that he was challenged, John Kennedy was challenged to have what's your life going to look like in one sentence? And the reason I like that so much is people can only grab what, you've got to keep it simple. I have 3 degrees, so I have an education, but I'm really a communicator, not an educator. An educator takes something simple and makes it complicated. The communicator takes something complicated and makes it simple. And I love the one sentence deal because I say, reduce your life to one sentence, so they can put it on your tombstone if they want to. And again, I've talked about my one sentence, and that is I add value to leaders who multiply value to others. And that's what I want to, if there's going to be a second sentence, I want it to be, and his name was John. My name's John. I'm your friend. And I don't want fans. I don't need any fans in my life. I just want friends. And the reason I say that is because if you have fans, you purposely see success. Wow, I wish we had time on this one. Success separates people. Success is a separator. It separates the people who have from the people who have not. And I don't like that. I think that great communicators and great leaders do everything in their power to close that gap. So, but see, if I want to be adored, if it's all about me, then I want that gap. I want fans. I want people to come and applaud and say, "Oh my gosh, he's brilliant. He's amazing. Have you ever seen anything like him? He's amazing." But I don't want that. I want to be their friend because you can't help fans. You can take their money, but you can't help them because there's too big of a gap. And I think that you reduce everything to one sentence in your life. And I would suggest to all of their viewers that they start on what's my one sentence statement for me? And, bounce it off your friends, ask them, what are my strengths? What do I do well? What would you say is my, my best quality in life? What would you say is that I do best for people in life? And get it down to just one thing. And keep it simple, and then, I tell people all the time is pick a rabbit. Pick a rabbit. We've all heard the statement that if you chase 2 rabbits, both of them get away. Well, it's because you chase 2. Pick a rabbit, get one. What's your rabbit? What's your statement? And then you just live and breathe that statement. And put it in your values, and put it in your practices, and put it in the principles that you live your life by, and let all those things come around that statement to enhance it and make it more clear, and more convincing and more compelling to other people.
John, you remind me a lot of our other co-founder. His name was Hiram Smith. He was the inventor of the Franklin Planner, the Franklin planning process. He passed away from pancreatic cancer about 7 months ago. Hiram said a lot of amazing things. One of my favorite quotes from Hiram Smith was this concept of living your life around I have to versus I need to versus I get to. I have to, yeah. I need to, I get to. My sense is that you wake up most days pretty excited about that you get to take the garbage out. How do you develop that mindset when it's raining, literally, metaphorically, lemons on us right now?
That's a great question, and I do live in that third level. And in fact, people, I get up every morning about 5:15, and I write. And people come to me and say, John, you're just incredibly self-disciplined. You get up at that time. And I said, no, I'm really not self-disciplined. I don't think so. I said, the reason I get up at 5:15 is because of anticipation. I get to, going right back to what you were talking about, Hiram Smith, I get to. I get up at 5:15 because I can hardly wait to put my robe on and get to my desk and I write with a legal pad and a 4-color pen, to be honest with you. I don't even use a computer. So, I'm a Neanderthal, man, but I love that process. But it's anticipation. As I'm writing in early morning, I am anticipating people reading this and their life being changed. And I anticipate people having eureka moments, and the light comes on, and all of a sudden they say, wow, John, help me. So it's in anticipation that allows me to be motivated. And if it's self-discipline, it's I have to. But if it's in anticipation, it's I get to. Right. And so, like being on your program today, I've looked forward to this because I greatly admire Franklin Covey. I greatly admire what you do, Scott, and I've got great help myself from your planners, et cetera. So, I hold, of course, I knew Stephen well, and I held him in high esteem. And so I could hardly wait to be on the program today because I just knew that you and I'd help people. And that's what we're doing.
You knew you were
going
to get to meet me.
Yeah, that's right.
And you just hoped I would introduce you to somebody beyond our mutual friend, Liz Wiseman. I got other celebrity friends. You just hold on. You hold on.
Yeah.
When you and
another
Alan when you and Alan and I have lunch, I'll introduce you to some other people. Okay.
Okay. We'll do that, and I'll give you a month to find another friend. Take your time. Just take your time.
John, according to your dad, you got 25 years left in you at least. After this masterpiece, The Leader's Greatest Return, what's next for you? What's on the yellow pad?
Well, I have a whole bunch of books. I usually have anywhere from 8 to 10 books in front of me that I want to write. I just finished, literally, during COVID-19 because I had time. I just finished a book that will come out next January called Change Your World. And it's truly my favorite book I've ever done. It's about how we can, in our own world, be transformative and help people have positive change in their life. And in one of my nonprofit organizations, we do transformation in small groups called transformation tables. And we're in 3 countries, getting ready to go into 2 other countries, and we've had great success. We only come in if a president or a prime minister invites us in, and then they have to give us buy-in in all 8 streams of influence. We have 22 countries in line right now, and I really in my life, one of the books I'm going to write, going to your question, is I want to write a book called "Is There a Finish Line?" And I'm in love with the question, and because I think that it has 2 answers. I think for many people there's a finish line. I think there are many people who at age 65 there's a finish line and they retire, or I think there are a lot of people who have finish lines in their life, and they play what my friend Simon Sinek would say. They play a finite game, but I think for people who play an infinite game, there is no finish line. And, I came into the world, the game was already started, and I'm going to leave this world. The game continues on. And I live with the great joy of no finish line, because here's what I know. If I say there's a finish line, and so I say, okay, at 75, I retire or whatever, I don't know what that age. Here's what I've learned about people that have a finish line in their life. When they cross their finish line, guess what, Scott? They're finished. They're finished. And I see people all the time. They're finished. It's over. I mean, honest to God, they're still alive, but they're finished. And I don't think we're supposed to have a finish line. I think that life is bigger than us. I think eternal principles are bigger than us, and I think that we should always be striving. So when people talk about bucket list, I tell people, yes, I've got a bucket list of things I'd like to do, but the biggest thing on my bucket list is I want to have something in my bucket list that I'll never accomplish, that lives beyond me, that keeps me striving, that keeps me running, that keeps me stretching out there. I think that's very important. And my father, up until through 95, he worked full time. He doesn't have a finish line. In fact, he had a couple of mini strokes, and he's kind of got a little close to what we thought. Well, maybe he's going to die, and then he comes back. And so I call him Daddy Lazarus. I said, Dad, you're just Daddy Lazarus. You just keep getting back up. And so, and I told him, I said, I'm not even going to call you old till you're 100, but he doesn't have a finish line. And I think the great fulfillment is never having accomplished the things that you were created to accomplish. I think that every person ought to die stretching. And I plan on, that's how I plan on I want to stretch. I want to be stretching, not to that line, but I want to be stretching for it. And because if I'm doing that, Scott, I'm still growing, I'm still learning, I'm still developing, I'm getting better. And, getting older is automatic, but getting better isn't. And, there's a world difference between those two. And I want to keep, getting older, that's happening, but I want to get better as I get older.
John, your positivity is contagious, but I feel like there's something maybe missing with you. It might be a co-author. I mean, I got some chops left in me, bro. Come on, what are you waiting on?
Oh, I think, you know what? I think
people.
You're an answer to prayer. I think you're an answer to my prayer.
I think an answer to your prayers.
I really do. I just think that at the end of one of my books is Scott Miller. So
no, not at the end. No, I think soon. I'll be in touch. My people will call your people, okay? We'll be in touch.
You have your people. Yeah, you call them. Please do.
You better answer, man. John, send us off.
Oh, I'll answer.
Send us off. Encourage people to stay positive. What can each of us that are just normal people, living our lives, raising our kids, trying to earn a living in the midst of the pouring rain of lemons right now, what's something that each of us can do tonight or tomorrow, today perhaps, to stay focused on what's next?
Well, first of all, when you use the word focus, I could do an hour teaching on what you focus on expands. And so where we are with COVID-19 right now, everybody has negative emotions. Everybody has positive emotions within. We don't rid ourselves of fear. I can't even imagine, when somebody says, I have no fear, I think you're delusional. You're on drugs. I have fears. So I have negative emotions, fear, which maybe pulls me down. I've got faith, which lifts me up. So it's not a question of do I have positive and negative emotions. The question is, what do I focus on? Because what I focus on expands. So if I focus on belief and faith, it expands and it becomes greater than my negative emotions. And so I tell people all the time, put your belief, your faith in front of you and put your fears behind you. Because what I ignore shrinks, what I focus on expands. And so it's not like I get rid of my fears, it's just I make them lesser. And I make my faith and my belief greater, because that's what I focus on, and that's what I expand on. And I would also tell, when I was talking about those learning lunches a little bit earlier, Scott, one of the 7 questions I ask in those lunches is, talk to me about what's the most important lesson you've ever discovered in your life. What's your most important life lesson? 100% of the time, Scott, that life lesson comes out of some adverse, difficult, dark valley in a person's life. I've never had a person, and I've done this for 40 years. So, put 12 lunches together because I have them every month. That's a lot of lunches. That's a lot of times I've asked that question. I've never had a person say, let me tell you, the greatest life lesson I learned was from something that I did well or that I was successful in.
Yeah.
it's always about adversity and difficulty. And so when I look at this time right now, I look at it as a very difficult time. It's a terrible thing that's happening. And yet I also look at it as a beautiful time, because I'm taking those lemons and I'm making lemonade, and I'm getting better because of this. And one of the things I think is good for all leaders is that I think leaders become very self-sufficient and then become arrogant. And I think that crises are good because it brings humility to all of us and helps us to understand I don't have all the answers, and I'm not supposed to have all the answers, and it's not good for me to act like I do have all the answers. And I think that there's a beautiful thing that when a leader has a sense of humility and reality. And, I've argued with reality, but 100% of the time I've lost. And I think that successful people understand this. Here, I close with this, with you on this question. I think people separate success and failure. And I think they say success is here and failure is here. And it's totally wrong. You don't separate success and failure. Success and failure, they always go together. They always go together. You don't separate them. I've never met a successful person that didn't have great failure and disappointment in their life. And I've never met a person that was failure that became successful that didn't have some bright spots in their life that gave them courage to step out and do something they probably wouldn't have done on their own. So I think quit separating success and failure. Reframe failure as a learning tool. The more that we use it as a learning tool, the more we become successful out of it. And just understand that, this too shall pass. It really will. And I tell people all the time, if you're on top of the mountain and you're just in gravy, this too shall pass. You're not going to stay there. And if you're in the valley and it's as dark as can be, this too shall pass. You're not going to stay there. And so just understand, get the big picture, reframe failure, and keep success and failure together, and just understand that focus on the things that are going to take you out of the ditch and put behind you the things that put you there.
John Maxwell, such an honor to have you on our program today. Truly, sincerely, genuinely a career highlight for me to be in your presence today. I'll take the first lemonade franchise for Salt Lake City when you're ready.
To you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, to you and all your viewers. And by the way, just make some of this. Make a just. You got to do this to get this. So,
all right. Now, John, text me, okay? Link me up with Alan. Yeah. Text me.
Yeah, I'll text you with Alan. Just first of all, give me your number. Got to have that. But
I got to give it to you off the air, because the ladies and gents will be stalking me and trying to be my fan. You know that. So
I know. And when I come out, I'm out to Salt Lake usually a half dozen times a year, and I'll call you. We'll have lunch together. I'll have a learning lunch. I'll ask you some questions.
I will be honored, and I'll pay. John Maxwell, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, friend.
What else do you say? John Maxwell on Franklin Covey's On Leadership program. Thank you for indulging us. We'll see you back here next week for a new episode.